Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a shift in the pharmaceutical industry that is, well, it's difficult to overstate. We aren't just talking about doing the same old science a little bit faster. We're talking about a fundamental transition from biology being a discipline of discovery, looking for things, to biology becoming a discipline of engineering.
Exactly. It's the moment where the industry stops playing, I don't know, hide and seek with nature and starts building what it needs from scratch.
And to guide us through this, we're looking at a pretty massive report that just came out, January 2026, by Christian Brandt from Deep AI Mind Copenhagen.
Hmm.
The title is Artificial Intelligence in Biotech Therapeutics, but that feels a bit dry for what's actually inside. This thing covers the entire R&D pipeline from the moment a scientist looks at a cell under a microscope to the moment a pillbox leaves a factory on a pallet.
Yeah, and what's so distinct about Grant's report is the timing.
Right.
I mean, if we had done this deep dive 3 years ago, we'd have been talking about potential and, let's be honest, a lot of hype.
Right.
But looking at this 2026 landscape, Grant is pointing to hard evidence. We have drugs in phase 2 trials, we have these billion-dollar infrastructure bets, and we have robots, actual bipedal robots walking around labs.
And that is our mission today. We want to get our heads around this robot scientist concept, look at why companies like Eli Lilly and NVIDIA are betting their futures on it, and, well, ask if this is going to solve the biggest problem in pharma, which is that making drugs is incredibly expensive and, usually fails.
The failure rate is the elephant in the room. Always has been.
So let's start there, the problem statement, if you will. Historically, drug discovery is described as finding a needle in a haystack. But even that doesn't quite capture the scale, does it?
Not even close. The chemical space, so the number of possible molecular combinations that could be a drug, is estimated to be around 10 to the power of 60.
10 to the power of 60.
I mean, that's more than the number of atoms in the solar system. And traditional drug discovery involved physically making a few thousand of those, testing them, and just hoping one worked. It wasn't finding a needle in a haystack. It was trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach by picking them up one by one with tweezers.
Okay, so enter generative AI. And I want to be really clear for you listening. We aren't talking about ChatGPT writing a poem about proteins here. We're talking about generative models applied to physics and chemistry.
Exactly right. In the same way an LLM predicts the next word in a sentence, these models predict the next atom in a molecular structure. They're proposing entirely new chemical architectures that don't exist in nature, but, and this is key, meet specific criteria we set.
The report highlights a partnership between Pfizer and a startup called Postera. This seems to be the textbook example of this in action.
It is. So Pfizer needed small molecules for an antiviral program. Normally, you'd spend years iterating on designs. But they used Postera's AI to design the molecules in silico on the computer. But here's the nuance that really matters. The AI didn't just design perfect molecules that were impossible to build. It optimized for something called synthetic tractability.
Synthetic tractability. That's a crucial term. So that basically means, can we actually make this in a beaker without it costing $1 billion per gram?
Exactly. I mean, there's no point in designing a miracle cure if it requires a chemical reaction that only happens inside a supernova. The AI was constrained by the realities of, the supply chain and chemical physics. And because of that constraint, Pfizer went from a cold start, 0 candidates, to having a validated molecule proving itself in live animals in 8 months.
8 months. The report says that is 40% faster than Pfizer's prior expectations.
And in the world of patent cliffs and competitive markets, 40% isn't just nice to have. That is the difference between capturing the market and arriving late.
But that's small molecules, chemistry. What about the really messy stuff? Biologics. Antibodies. Things that are large and floppy and three-dimensional.
That is a much, much harder physics problem. Small molecules are sort of like rigid keys. Antibodies are like complex origami structures that have to fold exactly right to work. And the report points to a company called Absci here. They deal with these large biologics.
And their claim is even bolder.
Oh, it is? Yeah. Absci uses what they call a zero-shot generative AI. That means they don't necessarily need to start with a known antibody and just tweak it. They can design a novel antibody from scratch. And they're seeing timelines from AI design to wet lab validation of about 6 weeks.
6 weeks? That feels unbelievably fast. But I have to play devil's advocate here. We're generating all these candidates at lightning speed. But are they good candidates? Or are we just flooding the funnel with more junk?
That's the core skepticism, and it's a healthy one. The argument from the report, though, is that because you are exploring that massive chemical space on a computer, simulating billions of options and only picking the top 10 to physically build, you aren't just failing faster, you are filtering smarter. You're bringing a higher quality candidate into the lab, which, in theory, should have a higher chance of working.
Which is a perfect lead-in to the next section of the report. Failing faster. In most industries, failure is bad. In pharma, failing late is the catastrophe. Failing early is actually a win.
It's purely an economic equation. If a drug is going to fail because it's toxic to the liver, you want to know that on day 30 when it's cost you $10,000, not on year 3 when it's cost you $10 million.
So the report brings up Novartis here. They're doing something really interesting with their old data, their archives.
Yeah, Novartis has decades of data. Past experiments, failed drugs, toxicity reports. Usually that stuff just sits in a filing cabinet or a dusty server somewhere. They're using AI to digitize and ingest all that legacy data to build predictive toxicology models.
So the AI can basically tap the researcher on the shoulder and say, hey, I know you like this molecule, but 15 years ago, a similar structure caused liver failure in rats, so maybe stop.
Precisely. It's an early warning radar. But the biggest bottleneck, and Grant's report spends a lot of time here, it isn't the lab, it's the clinical trials.
Right. This is where the money really burns. Recruiting patients, managing sites, all of it.
It's a logistical nightmare. So Novartis is applying digital twin technology to the trial design itself. Before they recruit a single human, they simulate the entire trial. They can toggle variables like, what if we change the age range? What if we exclude patients on blood pressure meds? They run thousands of these simulations to find the trial design that gives the fastest, most statistically significant result.
It's Moneyball for clinical trials.
That's a great way to put it. And it leads to one of the most futuristic, I think slightly controversial concepts in the report: synthetic control arms.
I wanted to dig into this. In a standard trial, you need a control group. Real people taking a placebo. How does a synthetic control arm change that?
Well, we have electronic health records. We have huge databases of patients from past trials. The idea is, why recruit 500 new people just to give them a sugar pill when we can model that control group using real-world data from people who already match the profile?
So you reduce the number of actual humans you need for the trial.
Drastically. It speeds up recruitment because you need fewer people. It cuts costs. And there's a real patient benefit here, too. You aren't putting sick people on a placebo when they could be trying a potential new treatment.
I can just see the FDA having a lot of questions about that, though. Validating that the synthetic people actually match the real people seems statistically tricky.
Oh, it is. And the report notes this isn't a rubber stamp situation. The regulators are very cautious. But for rare diseases, where you might only have 500 patients in the whole world, synthetic control arms might be the only way to run a trial at all.
Okay, so we've got software designing the drugs, we've got simulations optimizing the trials. But eventually, physics has to happen. Liquids have to be mixed. And this is where the report takes a turn into robotics. And not just robotic arms humanoids.
This is where the digital really meets the physical.
Yeah, the report highlights a robot called Supervisor from Insilico Medicine, introduced in 2025. It's bipedal, it walks on 2 legs. To me, this just screams PR stunt. Why do you need a robot with legs to mix chemicals? Why not just a conveyor belt?
It does sound like a stunt, but the economic logic is actually really sound. Think about a standard lab at Merck or Pfizer. It was built for humans. The benches are waist high, the aisles are shoulder width, the pipettes are designed for thumbs.
Right.
If you want to fully automate that with traditional industrial automation, conveyor belts, bolted down arms, you have to gut the golding. You have to tear out the infrastructure and rebuild it around the robots. And that is massively expensive and disruptive.
So the humanoid is a drop-in solution.
Exactly. The robot is designed to fit the room, so you don't have to redesign the room to fit the robot. It can walk up to the same bench you use, grab the same pipette you use, and press the same buttons on the centrifuge. It's just an infrastructure hack.
That actually makes a ton of sense. It's cheaper to buy the robot than to renovate the building, but the robot is just the hands. The brain is what the report calls agentic AI.
And this is a key distinction. Most lab automation today is scripted. You tell the machine, move plate A to slot B every 5 minutes. Agentic AI is different. It perceives and it decides.
And the big example here is the Eli Lilly and NVIDIA partnership. They announced a $1 billion investment in January 2026 to build what they're calling self-driving labs.
A self-driving lab closes the loop. So imagine an AI agent. It analyzes data and decides, okay, I need to test this hypothesis. It sends instructions to the robots mix the chemicals, run the test. The results go straight back to the AI. And then the AI learns from that result and immediately designs the next experiment.
And it does all this without a human meeting in between.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No coffee breaks, no sleeping, no waiting for the Monday morning meeting to decide what to do next. It accelerates the scientific method itself.
It's iterative discovery on autopilot.
And Lilly's taking this all the way to manufacturing. They're using NVIDIA's Omniverse to build digital twins of their factories.
We've heard digital twin in aerospace and things, but what does it mean here in pharma?
It means simulating the entire production line virtually before you bolt down a single machine. They can simulate fluid dynamics in the mixing tanks, the flow of pill bottles, everything. They catch bottlenecks before they even exist physically. And the report says this is all moving toward a concept called dark manufacturing.
Which sounds a little ominous.
It just means lights out. A factory that's so automated that you don't need to turn the lights on because there are no humans walking the floor. It's just pure efficiency.
Wow, that's impressive, but also a little unnerving. Let's look at the tech stack that's powering all of this. We can't skip over AlphaFold.
You really can't. DeepMind's AlphaFold was the big bang moment for this whole field. It predicted the 3D structure of pretty much every known protein, about 200 million of them.
But knowing the shape of a protein isn't the same as curing a disease.
Correct. AlphaFold gave us the map. But biology is dynamic. It's not a statue, it's a movie. And that's where multimodal models come in. The report spotlights a company, Recursion Pharmaceuticals here.
And multimodal just means using different types of data at the same time, right?
Yes. So Recursion isn't just looking at genetic code. They're looking at phenomics, which is basically high-resolution computer vision for cells. They take millions and millions of pictures of cells reacting to different chemicals.
So they are literally teaching the AI to see biology.
Exactly. And AI might notice that when you add drug X to a cell, the cell's internal structure changes in a way that looks exactly like a healthy liver cell. A human might miss that subtle visual cue, but the AI sees the mathematical correlation. It allows them to map these relationships between drugs and diseases that we just couldn't see before.
It really sounds like we have all the tools. But I want to pause the optimism for just a second. The report has a section on challenges, and they seem pretty significant.
Oh, they are. The biggest one is the classic garbage in, garbage out.
Data quality.
Yeah. Biology data is messy, it's noisy. Different labs use different protocols. Companies have their data siloed in different formats. You can't just train a model on all the biology because a lot of that data is just incomparable. Companies are spending years just cleaning and structuring their data before they can even start the cool AI stuff.
And then there's the black box problem. If an AI designs a drug, but it can't explain why it designed it that way, that's a huge problem for the FDA.
A huge problem. The report cites the FDA's 2025 draft guidance. They are demanding transparency. You cannot just walk in and say, well, the algorithm says this works. You have to validate the model. You have to prove it's not hallucinating. You have to show it's not biased.
And ultimately, there is still the translational gap.
The valley of death. We are getting very, very good at curing cancer in mice. We are getting very good at curing cells in a petri dish. But a human body is infinitely more complex. We haven't yet seen definitive proof that AI-designed drugs have a drastically higher success rate in phase 2 human trials.
So we're speeding up the start of the race, but the finish line is still just as far away and just as hard to cross.
For now, yes. The industry's bet is that by having much better starting points, we will eventually see better finishing rates. But that data is still coming in.
So let's look at the business side of this. Who are the winners here? The report mentions some massive consolidation.
We are seeing the tech and the bio merging. The report highlights the merger between Recursion and Exscientia. That was a deal worth over $700 million.
Why merge? What's the logic there?
Because you need the full stack. Recursion had the massive scale of biological data, the maps. Exscientia had the precision chemistry design. By merging, they created a vertically integrated company that can do both. It's an arms race to own the entire platform.
And do we have a poster child for success yet? I mean, is there a drug on the shelf?
Not on the shelf yet, but close. Insilico Medicine has a drug for fibrosis, ISM 001055. This is the one everyone is watching. It was discovered by AI, designed by AI, and it is currently in phase 2 trials showing positive safety and efficacy data.
So it's real. It's an actual patient.
It's the proof in the pudding. If that drug succeeds, it validates the entire thesis.
So Pulling all this together, we're looking at a future where the scientist spends less time pipetting and more time, conducting an orchestra of robots and algorithms.
The role is shifting, absolutely.
Right.
We aren't removing the human, we're promoting the human. The human asks the high-level questions: what disease should we solve? What is the biological mechanism? The AI and the robots handle the grunt work of execution. It's a force multiplier.
It really feels like we're moving toward what you could call generative biology.
That's the term. And I'll leave you with this thought. Right now, we're using these tools to fix things that are broken treating diseases. But if we can design proteins and antibodies that don't exist in nature, are we moving toward a future where we engineer our biology to prevent disease entirely?
That is a massive concept.
And think about those dark factories and self-driving labs. It is entirely possible that in the next few years, a breakthrough cure for Alzheimer's or cancer will be discovered at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday by an AI agent directing a robot, while every single human scientist is asleep in their beds.
The cure discovered while the world sleeps. That is a hopeful, slightly sci-fi, but very real possibility. We will be watching that space very closely. Thank you for walking us through this report.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone listening to The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed this, make sure to check out our other episodes on the future of health. We'll see you next time.